collaboration with the Cyprus Mail, this is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Haralambous.
This week we hear about a new delay in implementing the ban on single-use plastics in Cyprus.
We didn't do anything in last July, we only voted the law 2 weeks ago, which means that with the law that we voted and the extension that was given until September, you will see this stuff, straws and everything, and cutlery plastic, you will see it all over the place until September.
Dead animals from Limassol Zoo are found dumped in a landfill.
A civilian sent us all information and photographs, and then we did our investigation that those kangaroos and wallabies and other animals were dumped in garbage bags, which they are written on it, municipality of Limassol.
And you're invited to participate in a new campaign for gender equality.
Simple yet impactful ideas to improve gender equality in daily life, so it can be about anything.
Over the last, 4 or 5 years, we've spoken many times on the programme about the ban on single-use plastics. It's something that should have been transposed, the EU directive that is, into law here in Cyprus by July 2021. But Parliament has just passed an amendment extending the time before the ban comes into use to September this year. Now, why is that? Did we really need more time, since we've known this should have been coming into force a long, long time ago? Greens leader in our House of Parliament is Bambos Theobemptou. Bambos, we've spoken about it before. I've spoken to the MEP who introduced it in Brussels all those years ago. I'm aghast that we have now decided to put it back yet again. What is happening?
Well, actually, I'm very worried, and this is what I did say when I had my time in the plenary session to talk about this. I'm very worried because we were, as you said before, we had a deadline which was last July. Instead, we just voted for the law, it came into force, and we had this amendment to get it up to September, extend the date of implementation in September. And that is very worrying because I don't know what the European Union will do to us. May I remind you that we were at the last stage before court procedures were set in place. So we had the first warning letter, we had the second warning letter that they were ready to take us to have the court case against us. So now they are watching us, and I'm very worried that they will actually proceed with the court case against us.
Can you just explain to me what the reasoning behind this further extension was? Because we had already extended once to, I think, the end of April this year, as long as orders had been placed for these items before that deadline for the transposition in July 2021. And that's the second or third time that we've put it off, and I can't understand why.
Okay, the reason, first of all, I must say that we are getting in Parliament a lot of legislations that come very, very late. So we are in the middle of discussing municipal waste, and then we had this that came in a rush, and government was saying this is very important, please do this, because we are very late, and we are in the brink of the EU starting court procedures against us. So we dropped everything to actually do this. Government claimed that since we were obliged to get this enforced by last July, that they had meetings with all the employees associations, all the people that actually doing business. Everybody was aware that we had this change. Also, because this came into force last July, a lot of businesses that were getting stuff from Europe, they couldn't get them anymore because the rest of the European countries actually had this in force. So what remained is that were getting stuff, plastic, single-use items, plastics from third countries. Now, what worries me is that, as you know very well, if you ship stuff within Europe, there are no controls. So I'm worried that not only we will be importing stuff from third countries to Cyprus, but from then on, I'm very worried that we might be selling them to other European countries as well. I don't know what will happen, but I'm very worried that we actually did this extension.
Sorry, Bambos, are you saying that we imported after the ban and then we were reselling to other European countries? I thought most other European countries had already transposed these laws and they weren't buying.
You don't know what is happening. If I get an item from a third country outside the European Union, the customs controls normally will stop me. Okay? So they will check and see what is it that I'm importing, and they will tell me that this is not allowed. Because we don't have this in force in Cyprus, I'm very worried that a lot of businesses will actually make big imports. They import a lot of stuff to have it here available on the island. So let me tell people that we are not only talking about the ban. We are talking about plastics. There are measures within the law to reduce their consumption. There are plastics that we cannot import or produce within the European Union. There are plastic products which have specific markings. There are plastics that have extended responsibility of the producer, that is the one who sells them will actually be obliged to do the recycling of them. There are plastics that have a mandatory percentage of recycled material. So this is the last one that I'm very worried of what will happen. Because these, if you have them in stock, you can actually use them for a long period of time.
Let's clarify that, please, because I thought that the last time I spoke about this, I think last year on the programme, we were told, I thought, that nobody would be able to make any further orders after July the 3rd, 2021. Now,
Yes.
If that's the case, then everything that we have in this country at the moment, recyclable or not, should surely have been an order placed before that date. But you seem to be telling me that people are still ordering these items.
Of course, yes. This is, because we didn't. There are two pieces of legislation. There are more actually, but two important pieces of legislation that people should be aware. If it's a directive that you have to transform into national law, then it will only come into force when you actually introduce it to your national legislation. If it's a regulation, an EU regulation, and not an EU directive, but an EU regulation, the EU regulation will come into force immediately. So here we have a directive. The directive, when it was voted 3 years ago, it said that it will come into force on July 2021. But what it meant is that by July 2021, it should be transformed into national law.
Which we didn't do.
Exactly, yes. So it's only when you transform it to your national law that comes into force if it's a directive.
So why wasn't it transposed?
There are a million of excuses that they actually tell. I need to tell you, though, that we get a lot of legislation that they fear that it will upset the market. It's very often that we see it arriving very late in Parliament. It's very often that we see this.
But sure.
Remind you what happened with the plastic bags when we first had the charging of a plastic bag. again, at that time, it was so late that we had the deadline that if it didn't do this, we would go into court. This time with the single-use plastics, they gave us a deadline that by 28th of March, if we didn't have it in place, EU will take Cyprus to court.
I have to ask, why is it that Parliament voting or discussing the transposition of an EU directive should take so long? Because even if the government is at fault for not putting the bill forward in time, surely Parliament is able to fast-track some of these things which are obviously going to have a huge impact on our whole environment.
Yeah, but in order for Parliament to actually start the discussion of a piece of legislation, you need to have the legislation submitted to Parliament by government. The government submitted the legislation after the Christmas holidays in February. So this is March now. We did this, we abandoned everything that we had in the Environment Committee just to do this. We stopped everything. And now it dropped everything because again they are late with another transposition, which is about environmental noise.
But surely when you start discussing one piece of legislation, it's no good if you know that it needs to be passed to drop it in order to start discussing another piece of legislation. Wouldn't it make more sense to get through the first one, put it to the plenary and then move on to the second one? If you're trying to discuss half a dozen different ones at the same time and stopping and starting, then of course it's going to take longer.
Yes, this is what we did. We dropped everything. We closed the subject of single-use plastics, and we also got another threat from EU with a deadline. So we dropped everything again, and we started discussing environmental noise because, again, government was very late.
I'm sorry, I don't buy that, because it just seems to me that if you stuck to the first one until it got to the plenary, then you moved on to the next one, things would move much faster.
This is what we did. That's what I'm explaining. This is what we did.
No, sorry, you said to me that when you got the next piece of legislation with a threat, you dropped the first one.
No, we dropped what we were doing at the time.
So which piece of legislation are you working on now in the Environment Committee?
Environmental noise.
And what's happening with the single-use plastics?
It finished. It went through Parliament. It's finished. It's done.
Okay, I've misunderstood what you were trying to tell me. So you're saying that in actual fact it went through Parliament with this amendment, but that didn't solve the problem, did it?
Of course, yes. It went through Parliament. It was voted into law. With the amendment, unfortunately, it went through by a majority of one vote.
So can we say that in September, according to this amendment, the transposition will automatically take place?
The transposition already took place. Within the law, there are specific categories of plastics. It's not only about one plastic. There are various types of plastics, and there are a lot of dates. So with regards to the type of plastics, there are 9 items, if I remember well, that had a deadline that they could not be imported or produced in a country. 9 types of plastics. And that was the deadline within the directive last July as well. That was extended to September. There are other things that have other dates within the law that they are forward. For instance, there is a category of products, I don't remember which exactly, that will come into force in 2024, for instance. There are dates within the law. There are 5 types of plastics. One type automatically you're not allowed to import it or produce it. Others will have markings. Others will have the obligation to take measures to reduce the consumption. Others should have percentage of recycling. Others should be recycled, etc.
All right, let me ask you this, Bambos, because this is running on a bit, and that's my fault because I had misunderstood how you were explaining that Parliament worked. But things like plastic cutlery and plastic straws, which I had thought had been banned last year, we still find them all over the place.
Exactly. So this is one of the two plastics that you mentioned are two of the 9 plastics that last July, when the directive came into force, in the countries that actually transposed the directive, these countries they didn't allow straws, for instance, to be imported or produced within the country. We didn't do anything in last July. We only voted the law 2 weeks ago, which means that with the law that we voted and the extension that was given until September, you will see this stuff, straws and everything, and cutlery plastic, you will see it all over the place until September.
And then any that's left in stock will be disposed of, recycled,
Yes.
or what?
Yes. They would not be allowed to actually put it on the market or be supplied to customers.
And what about customers, I'm thinking of coffee shops and things, who may already have been persuaded to buy large quantities of these things? Will, come September, they be given a grace period to use up what they have in stock? That seems to always happen.
Yes, they will be given the grace. This is what they were saying when they got this extension through. That is, we need to be careful not to upset the market, and there are people that have this, there is in their stock that they had this, and we should give them time to dispose of them and stuff like that. This is the excuses that they gave. But from last July, government, the Department of the Environment, as I was saying before, did a lot of meetings and notified everyone of these obligations that we had within the directive. And a lot of companies actually, they didn't continue with the old use and the old plastics that they use. And you see a lot of companies now that they give you different, for instance, food containers compared to what they were giving before.
So we are getting there, however slowly.
Yes.
I think we better end it there. At least that's a slightly positive note, and we'll wait to hear about the noise legislation as well. Bambos Theobemtou, leader of our Green Party in Parliament, thanks for joining me.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you.
This is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Haralambous.
There are rules in Cyprus governing the disposal of dead animals, but in many cases they aren't actually followed to the letter. And a shocking case came up last week when it was discovered that animals from Limassol Zoo had apparently been dumped in plastic bags. Kyriakos Kyriakou from the Animal Party joins us now to tell us what happened and indeed what we can do about it. Kyriakos, thanks for coming along on the programme once again. First of all, animals from Limassol Zoo, do tell us more.
Well, of course, the latest news, which we can discuss, the statements of the head of the veterinary department this morning, which they were unacceptable from Animal Party Cyprus. But the importance of the whole situation concerning the licensed Limassol zoos is that they are under the law of 81/2002, which, as you know, in 1999 there is a directive concerning the zoos all over Europe. And what happened is that a civilian sent us all information and photographs, and then we did our investigation that those kangaroos and wallabies and other animals were dumped in garbage bags, which they are written on it, municipality of Limassol. And of course, according to the regulation concerning the animal zoos, and also the regulation concerning dumping animals, which is prohibited with another directive, and they are not supposed to dispose these animals. They have to follow procedure. And all these, they follow nothing. And these poor animals, they've been dumped in a garbage box in Vati. They've closed down Vati, but surrounding area, it looks like now everybody goes there and dumping garbage.
Let's just clarify, please, Kyriakos. Vati, of course, used to be a landfill, but it has officially been closed. And from what you've just said, it is now being used as a fly tipping area, and anybody just goes and dumps stuff there. But what concerns me is the fact that animals are supposed, I believe, to be incinerated, are they not, when they die? And this applies to farm animals, and indeed there are rules for how vets dispose of pets, aren't there? So tell us a little bit about what should be happening, and then we can talk about who was responsible for these animals being dumped from the zoo.
The rule is that there is only one company in Cyprus which has got a license in order to pick up these dead animals, and then they are disposal in this, burn them. That's the procedures. Because of the fear of zoonosis and public health, nobody is allowed to dump anything, any animals, anywhere in Cyprus. This is the law today, everywhere in Europe.
So we have the law that says they should be incinerated. We've had cases in the past of sheep and goats turning up, again dumped. I presume that's because farmers don't want to pay the fees to this company to do it properly, is it?
You put it very well. It's also the case with the Limassol Zoo. According to the information which they came to the party, it was very expensive for them to give them to this company, and that's why they find this solution to dump them in the ex-landfill in Vati. And my question here is that the statements of the head of the veterinary department, when he came in, he said that APC is not right. If we are not right, then how he's going to impose fines? According to which law? Is it the law which is the competent authority to monitor the zoo? And he himself, if he was monitoring the zoo, we shouldn't be in this situation today. So actually the sanction should be on his department and not because they didn't do their job. You understand what I'm trying to say here?
Were the zoo animals euthanized, or did they die naturally? You talked about kangaroos and wallabies. How did they die?
Exactly. Now the police is investigating to find out with the veterinary department in a post-mortem, how did this animal die? Do they euthanize them? Because if they euthanize them, it's another crime. If they die from natural causes or whatever, they should have this information been in the records. Zoos, under the law 81/2002, they should have keep records for everything which is happening in the zoo, either import, export, sales, deaths, anything. And I said to everybody, challenge them to show us these records. When was the last time the veterinary department visit and inspect this zoo or any zoo in Cyprus?
So you're saying that this should fall on the shoulders of the veterinary services because they are the ones who should be making sure that everything is being done properly, and clearly it's not. But you said that the animals that were found at Vati were in Limassol municipality bin bags. Now, does that mean that it was the municipality who took these animals away and dumped them?
Well, it's been accepted that these animals belong to the Limassol Zoo. And the municipality, as you know, who has got the license for running the zoo, has the responsible for the zoo. They are responsible for running the zoo of Limassol, and it's been accepted publicly. Then they start an inside investigation to find out what happened. Everybody knows now. Everybody knows these animals belong to the Limassol Zoo.
So what's to be done next? The police, presumably, as you said, are investigating, but do we have, although we have the regulations, do we have whatever it takes to bring the culprits to justice?
Well, this is what we are pushing as Animal Party Cyprus, that the police is doing its job. The competent authority to take their responsibility and see their responsibilities concerning the impulse of the regulation, okay, and also the municipality to investigate and see what what's happening, what is happening, and what they're going to do in the future. Otherwise, the zoos or any zoos have no any more role, because according to the regulation and the year of the directive of EU, these zoos are supposed to take care of the wild animals which are in danger of extinction. And these fail all over Europe. Zoos are closing down. So we're expecting these three bodies to come out with their investigations and find out who are the guilty parties.
We will follow that with interest because it's obviously a quite unacceptable situation. Kyriakos Kyriakou from the Animal Party in Cyprus, thanks for joining me.
Keep up to date with events in Cyprus and around the world with the Cyprus News Digest.
A campaign was launched yesterday by the Embassy of Sweden and the Centre for Sustainable Peace and Democratic Development. That's abbreviated to SEED. It's the launch of Equality Makes Sense, an online campaign for civic participation. From SEED, we're joined on the programme by Meltem Ikinci. Meltem, thanks for joining me. First of all, whose idea was this Equality Makes Sense, and what are you hoping to achieve?
So the idea emerged through our previous research findings, which highlights the need for more women's inclusion in all social domains, political participation, and the need to address inequalities among different genders in Cyprus. So when we were brainstorming around how we can utilize the Pusula platform, the online platform, and how we can address social challenges such as gender equality, together with Embassy of Sweden and FES, we decided that it would be very timely to do such an online campaign. So it was a collective brainstorming exercise.
And how is the campaign going to work? You want people to input ideas, I think.
Exactly. So we want people to visit the platform, which is cypruspusula.org, and simply share their ideas. Very simple ideas. It doesn't have to be complicated. Simple yet impactful ideas to improve gender equality in daily life. So it can be about anything. It can be about having equal share of house chores and childcare, to addressing gender pay gap or gender balanced representation in politics. So we want to hear from everyone who lives on the island to share their ideas. And another point that I want to mention is that the platform offers translation functionality, so anyone can participate in their own language and easily share their ideas.
Once you've got all of these ideas in, because I have a feeling that it's actually going to run, is it to the end of April almost, what are you then going to do with those ideas?
While the campaign is still on, people can actually collect support for their ideas as the campaign runs. And once the campaign is completed, the 10 most popular ideas that receive the highest support will be then shared with respective stakeholders for their potential adoption and implementation. So this will be like a crowdsourcing of ideas so that we can support policy change. We can liaise with relevant stakeholders to see how we can implement some of these ideas.
To improve gender equality. So we'll send people to cypruspusula.org, or I guess they can find details as well probably on the SEED website, the Centre for Sustainable Peace and Democratic Development. We've got the details there from Meltem Ikinci on that event that started yesterday, and it's going to run through until the end of April. Well, that about wraps up this edition of the Cyprus News Digest. Many thanks for your company. Hope you'll join me next week. Till we meet again, take care and God bless. Bye-bye now.